everybody, welcome. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. This is the first in the Young and Black webinar series, exploring Black male identity in the UK. We have some amazing panelists today and we have an amazing discussion to get through. So I'll just give it a few more minutes just as people are joining in, just to give people some time to join. Great, thank you so much for joining. I'll just give a brief intro into why everyone is gathered here today, what UK Youth is, and then I'll hand it over to the panelists so that we can get stuck into this conversation. So UK Youth is a leading national charity that exists to ensure all young people are equipped to thrive and empowered to contribute at every stage of their lives. UK Youth provides young people with life skills delivered through our network of local youth organisations made up of 7,000 organisations across the UK youth movement, reaching 1.6 million young people. In summer, we launched the Young and Black campaign following the murder of George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter protests across the world. Through the Young and Black campaign, we've been championing and sharing Black voices, Black stories, and Black experiences living within the UK. This event will be in particular exploring Black male identity within the UK through our panelists' stories, their experiences, and things that they have seen across the UK. We just want to say a huge thank you to our supporters, Citibank and Oliver Bonus, for providing support for us to host events such as this. I'm now going to hand over to Duro, who's going to be moderating the session today. So thank you so much. Also, just to say to any participants, if you have any questions, please make sure you put them in the Q&A function as we go along this event. We will be taking 10 minutes at the end of the event to answer any questions that you might have. So please, as we're going along, please put this in the Q&A function. Over to you, Duro.
All right, thank you very much, Denise. Thank you for that warm introduction. Good evening, everybody. Good to see you all join here so far. I think we have 125 people participating. Definitely expecting a lot more. Really excited to be here and to be hosting this deep, much needed conversation this season. My name is Duro Oye, and I am the founder and chief executive of a youth empowerment organization called 2020 Change. And also I'm a documentary filmmaker. Honored to be on the panel with some bright young gentlemen. I'm gonna allow them to introduce themselves. So I'm gonna go right to my left. David, do you wanna introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about you, who you are, what you do.
Hello, everybody. My name is David Whiteley. AKA also known as Sideman. I'm a comedian, presenter, and host, and I was telling these like earlier sex symbol, but they don't really buy into that. But that's up to them to believe. The truth is the truth. And yeah, just I do all things media, really.
Thank you very much, David. Jonas, over to you.
Hello, kings and queens. My name is Jonas Andrew Phillip. I'm a public speaker, workshop facilitator, and also event host. I currently do an apprenticeship, but I'm looking to launch my business next year called Asia Ambition, where we equip young people with the best ability and best skills they need to thrive in their future. And I'm extremely grateful to be here. Thank you for all of you for coming today, putting some time aside to come to this and invest into your personal development, and also I'm sure help your professional development as well.
Fantastic, thank you. Lewis, over to you.
Cool. Good evening, everyone. Greetings. My name is Lewis Howell. I am one of the co-directors of Revolution Hive, which is a social enterprise that exists to equip young people for life beyond the classroom. We go into schools, colleges, universities, run workshops and programs on personal development, social responsibility, and global citizenship. And I also am the founder of a consultancy and training organization that focuses on helping charities, social enterprises, and corporate companies to improve their youth and community engagement and their social mobility initiatives. And that is called 7PK.
Thank you very much. Malambo.
Hey everyone, thank you for being here. My name is Malambo Makani, and I'm a trainee solicitor at a corporate law firm. And outside of corporate law, I'm building two social enterprises. One is called Knockout Crime, which helps young people involved in knife crime, gun crime, and gang culture to find an escape outside of that. And the other is called the Widening Access Network, which helps young people as well to find opportunities that they wouldn't normally have access to.
Thank you very much. Jason. You're up. Jason? I'm not sure if he's frozen, but we'll come back to
Hi,
Jason.
good evening, everyone. I hope you're well. Again, thank you so much. Right.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go on my phone because I feel like the internet's gonna let us down here. So
No problem. No problem. Bismarck, let's come over to you and then we'll come back to Jason.
Okay. Hey everyone, my name is Bismarck, also known as Busy Swigs. I'm a rapper from Warsaw, and I'm currently doing a project with Homegrown 31, which is around, you know, the whole Black Lives Matter movement, and hopefully that'll be launching sometime in October. So yeah, I'm just glad to be here. I'm glad to get involved in these type of conversations. So thanks for having me.
Okay, Jason, are you ready for us?
Yes, just in case it goes off, I've got it on my phone. But sorry, just quickly, my name is Jason Arde, and I'm an assistant professor in sociology at Durham University, and just really want to say.
That's all good.
Yep, very. Just want to say, right, he's gonna come back to us.
That's big suspense, you know. He has something to say.
I know, it must be something big. Jason, what's up?
Our comedic timing.
All right, let me move on quickly just because I'm conscious of time. Jason, you there? You're on mute on the other one.
Yeah, he's set up though. He's got the setup.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, look, he's even giving us.
Yeah?
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
Go for it.
So sorry. Cheap internet. Yeah, firstly, sorry for the internet connection problems. My name's Jason Arde. I'm an assistant professor in sociology at Durham University, and just want to say, like, thank you so much to Youth UK for having me here, and really looking forward to learning from everyone and the panel, and just, yeah, thank you to everyone for being here.
Fantastic, thank you. So I'm gonna dive into the discussion very, very soon. I can see our numbers are going up. Just to make you guys aware, the Q&A function's open. Shoot your questions in there. I can already see some of the questions coming in. I know we've got the amazing back-end team at UK Youth. They can see this as well. There's some questions that I think you guys can answer. So someone was asking about, Elaine was asking about our organizations. She couldn't write them down too fast, so I'm sure the UK team will be able to respond to that in the comment section. And if you haven't tweeted or posted about this on social media, make sure that you do. It is a wide conversation. It's definitely necessary for us to talk about this and noise this abroad. So hashtag Young and Black and at UK Youth while you're doing that. So the first discussion that we're going to head into, I want to talk about all of our experiences as being a young Black male in the UK. Talk to me about your upbringing and your experience growing up being a young Black man. And I'm going to go to Malambo first. I think everybody needs to touch on this because all of our experiences are unique. And as you can tell from everything that we do, we all have different experiences. We all have different walks of life, different occupations. So that the UK Youth team have really done a good job in selecting a varied panel here. So Malambo, let's hear from you first.
Yeah, definitely. So I was born in Zambia, and my parents moved to the UK when I was 6 years old. They came over as economic migrants in search of a better life. And by the time I was 14, my parents had problems with drugs and alcohol. And I was taken away from home by social services. That was the last time I ever saw my parents. And since then, I lived like within the care system. And you know, dropped out of school when I was 14, joined the gang. All that madness, and then you know, was in the streets for quite a while. And by the time I was 20, I decided to just leave that behind and decided to get a job as a cleaner. So I started working as a cleaner, you know, cleaning toilets in the care homes I previously worked at. And then from there, I managed to sort of use that experience to then get a job as a social worker. Sort of say, hey, look, I've been through these experiences. I can help other young people that are coming through the system. So, you know, give me a shot, give me a chance. You know, I'm sure I can find ways, you know, to at least share my experience and also to motivate and try and get young people off that path, or at least from getting deep into the system. Then from there, I decided to go back to education, did my GCSEs as a much older student, did my A-levels as a much older student, and actually secured a place at Durham University, which is where Jason is a professor. So I studied law at Durham, and from there transitioned into into corporate law, and that's kind of where I am today. And that's kind of, in a nutshell, is my story.
I love that. It's one of those things where you can never judge a book by its cover. Looking at Malambo's Instagram, not Instagram, his LinkedIn, just looks completely clean. You would never know that he has the story that he has, and I'm just blown away by that. Thank you for sharing and being so open and honest. Lewis, talk to us about your experience growing up as a young black male in the UK.
Yeah, sure, man. I don't necessarily, I wouldn't say that there was anything significant. The reason I say that is because I was fortunate enough to live in a two-parent household, which I think, I use the word fortunate, and sometimes I think that's a bit disrespectful to some extent, because, it's not to say that someone who doesn't live in a two-parent household is unfortunate, but I lived in a two-parent household. Interestingly for me, and I know if my mom's not watching now, she's going to watch at some point, but she knows we keep it 100 at all times. I wouldn't necessarily say that my parents had a good relationship growing up. I think it was very clear that they chose to stay together for the sake of me and my sister, which I actually commend them for. Do you know what I mean? And I think, not to say my mum didn't have a massive part in that, but I think I definitely show a level of respect to my dad for that, because he grew up without a father. So, it's very easy to then think, well, actually, if my mum can do it, then their mum can do it, but he chose not to. So yeah, grew up predominantly, my focus in life, which sounds very cliche, was football. You know what I'm saying? Like, I was always very intelligent, always very good at academics, didn't really take school seriously. Like, I always say to people, and this is going to sound a bit cliche, but I went to school for banter and girls mainly, until someone said to me in year 11, like, yo, your GCSE stay with you for life. I said, swear down. I was like, oh, maybe we should do something about that. So I remember like three months before GCSEs, fortunately, as I said, I was always intelligent. So it took me just to knuckle down in them last 3 months and come out with A's and B's. So I was good. But I was always like, to some extent, playing catch up, because everybody had applied for college before I applied. Everybody had applied to, uni before I applied. I didn't really look at what my options were available to me, because in my head, it was like, I'm going to play football, innit? So that's the fact of the matter. Clearly, I don't play football, so I had to start looking at other things. But the main thing that I wanted to touch on as we talk about this experience is the fact that I actually think that for me, in some settings, and I would say it was the majority, my leadership qualities were often overlooked, because I was deemed as someone who I always would back chat, I always had an answer, I always wanted to ask questions, and it was never seen as, oh, well, maybe he's a critical thinker, or he has a particular way of looking at things, or he can rally people. Like, they thought, oh, well, he leads on the football pitch, but that doesn't mean necessarily that he can lead in other spaces. Whereas actually, I think I was displaying a lot of those qualities, and I was seen as a nuisance to some extent, which I think also, if I'm being real, when I look back, maybe I was a nuisance. Sometimes I wonder how I had friends in secondary school, because I had no off switch. I just was chatting the whole day. Do you get what I'm saying? And sometimes I think, how are you friends with me? Shut up, bro. Do you get what I mean? But anyway, I think, yeah, like when I came across certain settings, especially adults who gave me the space and freedom to express myself in the best way possible to allow me to play leadership roles, that helped me a lot more. And I know when we talk about professional experiences later, I'm sure we can talk more about that.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Once again, another layer to this, a different kind of spin to it. And I love it. I'm liking the conversation so far. Let's come to you, Jason. Talk to us about your experience growing up as a young black male in the UK.
Thanks. Really inspiring. So I guess my experience is probably slightly different. So I'm autistic. So I had quite an interesting childhood, to say the least. So I didn't speak until I was 11. So I signed until I was 11, and I didn't learn to read and write until I was 18. So I was an adult when I learned to read and write. And so the joke that, the running joke we have is that there was a stage where me and my daughter were reading the same level of books when I had my daughter 21. So my daughter was the opposite of me. She was hyperlexic, so she could read competently by the time she was 3. Wow. And there was a point where we were both reading the same books. So my wife taught me how to read and write. And she's a primary school teacher. And then basically when I was 18, growing up, I grew up on a South London council estate. And obviously you see a lot of things. And I always had, there was this one really crazy situation when I was about 15. And the local kind of drug dealer, he kind of said to me, like, he said, look, I've got a lot of things, but the one thing I wish I had was, the kind of setup you've got as a family. And he was like, keep your head in your books and try and learn. But obviously at that point I was kind of like, well, I don't know how that will work out, because I thought I was going to be a professional sports person. So I thought I was either going to play football or be a professional footballer or be a professional snooker player. And neither happened. But at 18, kind of went to a homeless shelter when I was 18 for Christmas, and basically just decided that I was going to do everything I could to help as many people as I could. So I got involved working with charities. And then, yeah, long short, within 11 years of learning to read and write, I got a PhD. And then when I turned 30, which was 5 years ago, I managed, my lifelong target was to raise £1 million charity before I turned 40. And I'm on 5 million now. So that's something that means a lot. But yeah, so basically managed to kind of do all those things. But I think the biggest thing that I always remembered that my mum said to me was that hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. So I knew I wasn't intelligent. I knew that. And I knew all of my limitations, but I thought with a few kind of gifts I've got, I'd try and make the most of it and see where I end up. And I guess my mum led me to being on this panel with these amazing people. So that's it.
Wow, thank you so much, Jason. I'm deeply, deeply inspired. I mean, hats off to the research team at UKE for literally digging deep into everyone and really putting together this panel. I was so touched by that. Thank you. David, tell us about your experience growing up as a young black male in the UK.
Well, yeah, my experience was different in the sense that I was born in Jamaica. So I came here when I was about 10 or 11. And the first place that I lived in was Ipswich for about 6 months. And Ipswich is a real, like, it's country really, isn't it? So there's hardly any black people there. I was the only black person in my primary school. And obviously I grew up in a country where everyone looked like me. So racism in the sense of walking down the road and feeling different was non-existent. Then to go to the complete contrast of then growing up spending time in Ipswich where everybody then doesn't look like me. And I distinctly remember everybody actually touching my skin when I was in primary school, because they had none of the kids had ever seen a black person before. So that was like my first initial experience, just being within the UK in general. And then over time, I just slowly noticed differences growing up in how people view me, how people interact with me, how people treat me, that I didn't view as probably racism at first. At first, I probably thought it was classism, because, you know, I'd have kids in my school that had more money than me, and there was their parents were in a different economic class, and then I would get dissed over stuff like that. So I couldn't get my trainers. So I was always shopping at Shoe Zone when they were shopping at JD. So I didn't deep why I was in that financial position at the time. I was just thinking that I'm in that financial position because I just am. I didn't know about systematic oppression. I didn't understand it. So everything growing up black in the UK, it's like a lot of things. It's like I realized on the journey, but I'm realizing now that the youth of today, they're realizing exactly what it is a lot quicker due to the emergence of social media. I feel like if social media was as prevalent as it is now and as topical as it is now in my time, I would have realized and I've been more aware of things. I didn't quite know why. So yeah, I feel like it was just literally a journey of knocking down the building blocks of what I thought was going on growing up.
All right, let's be real. Shoe Zone was lit for a period. Let's not even stunt. Shoe Zone deserved its purpose.
Shoe Zone was never lit.
Where? No, thank you. Thank you for that, David. Thank you. Let's quickly go to Jonas and Bismarck. We'll come to you afterwards. What was your experience growing up in the UK?
Thank you. So for me, growing up as a young black person, so obviously I'm 18 years old, so I've just ended my childhood. But I grew up in a single parent household. My parents split, or can't even call them as parents because they split before I was even born. So for my entire life, it was just a thing of, I lived with my mum and my grandma, and we didn't really have the best. They still were able to put food on the table, but we didn't have the best income. But it's a first world problem because I'd go to school and there'd be kids with the new tracksuits, the new clothes and all of that. And I'd be wearing low brand clothes with poor quality and non-matching tracksuits and stuff like that. And I get mocked for that. And it got to a point where I was in top sets in reception and year one. And it got to a point where I was being treated differently by a certain teacher than all my other classmates. So then in my head, I thought to myself, why is this happening? So then I began to kind of start acting differently towards her. And then that's where I got my label as the bad, troubled child. And from that point forward, my primary school was saying that I had disabilities. I need to be sent to a pupil referral unit and all of that stuff like that. But legit, all I used to do was just like Lewis, if I saw an injustice, I'd say, yo, I don't think this is fair, da, 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 da. And because teachers have the power in the system, they would use their power to put fear in me, because obviously when you're young, you're scared of your parents, and your mother's there fighting, doing 2 jobs at once, at one point unemployed for years. You don't want to have to lose a job, and you want to keep a roof over your head. So they kind of use that to manipulate me and mess with my head. And the same thing happened throughout secondary school as well. And there were certain moments in my life, for example, getting my nose broken when I got jumped because of a bunch of people in my year group, when I wasn't involved in the situation. There was moments when I got hit by a car and I nearly lost my life. This was like when I was 13. There's a few stuff as well, but I can go on for ages. But even me being isolated from my year group and nobody liking me anymore because I wasn't like everybody else, where I'd sit down and let all the teachers have power over us and treat us a certain way. But it got to a point in my life where I said to myself, okay, you've gone all the way from top set to bottom set. You've got nobody to back you but yourself. How are you going to change your life? So my mum put me in contact with a mentoring organization when I was in year 9 in my local area in South London. And after I did that for a year, we realized that because there's so much toxic nature within my life, by what I have to be surrounded with at that point, I need more help. So that's when I went to the 100 Black Men of London, which is a community mentoring program. And by that point, I said to myself, okay, everywhere I go, no matter how I want to act, I get labeled as the bad kid. If I'm quiet, if I'm loud, if I'm talkative, it's the same thing. So let me try it one more time to be the good kid. And this is when I was in year 10. So I was 14, 15. And I got in trouble in my first session because I changed the whisper in Chinese whispers. And someone changed, I said this game sucks. But somebody else changed it after me and said this game is S words. And I thought I saw. So I said, oh, it was me. I owned up to it, but it wasn't me. But then at that point, I said, let me just keep my head down. And I worked hard with that, and I ended up winning Mentee of the Year with the 100 Black Men of London after that, unanimously. And that was a really big turning point for me, because although I had to go back to year 11 and fix my grades up, I had a little bit of confidence within me. And then that was 2017. Moving forward, I met Lewis, Michael, built good relationships with them. Last year, I started public speaking, and I've just taken it up from there. I left sixth form in year 12 to go do an apprenticeship because I wasn't feeling sixth form at the time. The moment I just stopped, I wasn't feeling it after 2 months. So legit, this isn't good. I used to just sleep in my lessons. And if I wasn't sleeping in my lessons, I'd be going out to Central London to go for job interviews and working on my CV and doing cadets, working on events and doing other stuff like that, trying to preserve my energy. So when I'm out here, I can just go crazy with it. And I'm extremely grateful for all of that. It's been tough and there's loads of other stuff that happened, but I've got to be grateful that although I didn't have the best upbringing, we didn't have the best funds, now I can kind of stand up and do what I need to do to become successful and make sure I prop the door open for the other young Black people older than me as well, that like to follow suit and be amazing.
Hats off to you, man. Well done.
Thank you.
Really love your journey, loved your story, and love what you've managed to make of yourself, even with your background. Thank you for sharing. Bismarck, over to you.
Yeah. All right, thank you. So basically, I feel like my story really just involves a lot of opportunities and decisions. So I feel like, you know, from young, I was kind of I always had that academic advantage. I was always like, I wasn't really, you know, bottom of the class. I was always like, I could always pull my weight. So then, you know, as I went through primary school, it was, you know, it was just that I was able to, you know, stay on par with everyone else. But then it was like, the teachers wouldn't necessarily push me because it was like, oh, I don't know whether it was ideas that they had or the way that I portrayed myself, but it was like, you could see that the other kids would get, you know, maybe, you know, they'd get a bit of harder work, or maybe, you know, they'd get pushed in areas to help them excel and go further. But when it came to me, I felt like, you know, I wasn't really being pushed. And even my parents would say, yo, we don't think you're really being pushed. So then that led me to then, because I was so capable, it was like, oh, I don't have to try hard. I don't have to do anything more, because it's like, you know, if I'm not getting pushed, then what's the point in trying? So then I got to secondary school, and then I started off at a comprehensive. So then I was kind of around a lot of people that just were there for the sake of it, you know, and, you know, as I started, it was kind of like, yeah, I wanted to get my head down. I wanted to get you know, the best grades possible and everything. But then as I started to be around these people, and as I had it fed into my mind that, you know, I could get through life without having to really try hard. I didn't have to give it 100%. So then I just kind of started to let go. And then I started getting involved with people and things that necessarily began to hold me back. Then it was kind of like, you know, just giving up on the potential that I had. So then my parents would like continuously be pushing me, because obviously, you know, they want to see me do well. They want to see me go far. But it was kind of like I was throwing it all away. So then at the end of year 9, I had an opportunity to go to a grammar school. So then I took the test and I passed it quite easily. Like I passed it with flying colors. I was in like the top 3 of all the contestants. So then after that, then I started in the grammar school, and it was completely different atmosphere. And it was like, you know, everybody was pushing, everyone's pushed their biggest capabilities. But at the time, it was like, I still had this mentality where I didn't have to try hard. So then it was like, you know, everything really had to switch up. I really had to just change exactly how I portrayed myself, and just like continue to like show my ambitions. So then it came to like GCSEs, and everyone was worried about me. Everyone's like, yo, this guy's gonna fail. This guy's, you know, he's not gonna get far. But then, you know, I just before I decided to knuckle down, put my head down and show people that I could actually do it, you know, so then I ended up doing quite well. And then I got into the 6th form, and then I did 6th form. And then it was at the beginning of this year that I was scouted. Well, I went to a Homegrown 31 event, and that's a music organization. But because I always had the academic ability, it was kind of like I didn't get really the chance to be creative. And like creativity was like, you know, something I was very passionate about. I always wanted to do music. I was like, you know, it's something I was very passionate about. So then I met with Homegrown 31 at the beginning of this year, the organization. And they really, you know, helped push me that, you know, alongside the school thing, I can also, you know, pursue music and, you know, continue being my creative self. And obviously, you know, that just showed me that even though, you know, you want to show that you can, you know, excel academically, because that's like what's widely accepted that, you know, if you're good at academics, you're going to succeed in life. But, you know, I also took this music route, this creative route, and it just shows how far like I came with that as well. I mean, I'm here today, I'm talking to everyone about my experiences and stuff. So it shows like, you know, even though like everyone, well, you know, it's drilled into you that that you should take this academic route, the creative route is also, you know, just as beneficial. So then, yeah, it was kind of like, you know, my journey was just really about me making decisions based on like the world around me and my environment, because my environments just seemed to be ever changing, and it was like nothing was quite the same for a long period of time. So it was like I always had to adjust myself to then, you know, be able to like succeed and get to where I am today, really.
Wow. Thank you so much, Bismarck, for sharing. You know, it's really interesting hearing all of your backstories and your upbringing, how you got into where you are. It's really just, it's eye-opening for me, because obviously you see people, but you don't necessarily know their story. And thank you all for being just so open and honest about your experiences as well. You know, we're going to get a bit deeper into the conversation. That was just kind of like to set the tone so everybody can know where you're coming from. And I've been tasked to also talk a little bit about myself as well. So I'm going to do that very briefly before we move on to the next question. For me, I feel like I can see elements of my story in a lot of what you lot have all said. So I wasn't born here, I was born in Nigeria. I came over here when I was 7. And yeah, I was literally not dumped, but I was dumped in Tottenham, Broadwater Farm Estate. So anybody that knows North London and knows that level of estate, you already know what kind of situation it was, and especially given off my age, you know what the situation was like in that time as well. I was surrounded by a lot of Caribbeans and Jamaicans, and being Nigerian, African, I had a bit of an accent. So school every day was just fighting. I had to defend myself. People would mock my accent, mock my name. So I just automatically just became very angry. But at the same time, I was good academically. So I wasn't like others where you're messing up in school and you're not good academically, so they start dropping you off in grades. And I just carried on like that throughout secondary school. I was always that young person that the teachers would say, oh, you know, Drew, you got so much potential, why are you hanging around with all of these people? But I felt comfortable with the people I was hanging around with, but I did my work, whereas they were doing stuff and didn't do their work. And long story short, they got dropped to the lower classes and I remained in the top. So I was able to get by in that sense, but I was also involved in what I like to call street enterprise. So I dabbled in that for a bit. And I just started to realize that what I had is something that I could actually use in a more positive way, but no one really showed me that. And that's one of the reasons why I do the work that I do with my organization, to show young people that there's so much more within them. But yeah, long story short, but that's just the gist of it. So when I start touching on certain things that we're going to be talking about today, you understand my background. I'm just going to throw this out to the floor, and I want any one of you guys to pick up on it. Talk about your first experience of racism. So we talked about, you know, your journey, your experience as a young black man in the UK, but when did you first experience racism? And, you know, did you know it was racism, or is it something that you look back on and you think, well, actually that was kind of mad? So any one of you guys can jump on that. Jason.
I was going to say, my first experience of racism, and it wasn't actually a racist incident in the first instance, but the second phase was. So my dad had given me and my brother the talk around the age of 11. So my youngest is like 5. So I'm kind of looking at him now and thinking, right, 6 years time, you might have to have this talk. And, you know, I'm an idealist and I have this kind of really utopian hippie version of the world. I think everybody's beautiful. It's all peace and love. And I've always been like that since I was a kid. And so my dad kind of warned us about what the world is like and what police can be like in the UK, particularly with young black men. And so at 11, you know, I just learned to speak. So I didn't think that this was something that I could, I didn't really think this is something that I would experience. You just have faith in human beings that their job is to uphold the law in the most equitable way possible, regardless of skin color or creed. Anyway, fast forward 3 years, I was 14 and I was with 2 friends, and basically the police, I got stopped and they kind of said, you fit the description of someone that we've been looking for. And we was coming back from football. We'd been playing football, and interestingly, the police kind of told me they emptied all my bag, my belongings. I was up against the bonnet of a car, and at this point, I'm thinking, you know, being from an African family, if you know, it's that whole idea of like a community raises a village. So I'm thinking, if someone tells my mum, I'm in like serious trouble and I haven't done anything. But you know, that's not the end of the story. She's going to hear. All she's going to hear is Jason was up against the police car. So I'm kind of sat there. I'm stood there and I'm thinking, what's going on? And I'm kind of trying to remember how to do this dance, right? You know, soften your body language, be collected, be calm. But you don't really, you're not really thinking like that. You're panicking because it's a situation you don't expect to be in. And the 2 things that were kind of really telling were the 2 white friends that I was with. They actually asked me what had I done, and that the police would only stop me if I'd done something. And I said to them, well, I've been with you for the last 6 hours. So the period of time they're talking about is within the last 3, and I've been with you for the last 6 hours. So what could I have done? It was just interesting, that conditioning that people have. And obviously subsequently, you then learn to do this dance. So, you know, if someone had said to me from the age of 14 to 35, I'd be stopped by police every year of my life, you wouldn't think that. You don't think that would happen, but that's what's happened. And in the end, I guess you learn how to manage yourself, you learn how to equip yourself, you know how to behave, how to stand, how to talk, because you get to a point where I think I was about 17, where I was just like, there's just not going to be any policeman that I'll ever give the satisfaction of, you know, placing their hand on my head and lowering me into a car. That's just not going to happen to me. And I always felt like I was too smart for that. Not academically smart, but in terms of wisdom and temperament, I knew that I'd been blessed with a really good temperament, and that I could get myself out of that situation, because I wouldn't give, even in the face of like provocation or goading, I wouldn't give that police person what they want to place in the back of the car and say I've been violent or aggressive, because I'm just not that way inclined anyway. And that's not to say that people are, it's just to say that the police operate in a way that teases that out of people, particularly black men, and they're kind of trained in doing it. You know, it's actually the one thing I would say police are good at. You know, provoking black men. So yeah, in a way that they don't do other people. So that's I think a really salient point.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Malambo, let's hear your experience, your first experience with racism.
Yeah, so one of my first experiences was actually, you know, being stopped and searched, but that became normalized, and Jason has touched on that. The second experience I really wanted to talk about was when I then entered the world of work. So, I go into work, I transitioned from being a cleaner to a social worker. And I remember at that time, I could see a lot of people, you know, black, look like myself, in low entry positions or early entry positions that were sort of like there for longer than I was, right? But they were sort of like, it was almost like they were stuck there, you know, and I'd ask them questions and, hey, you know, how long have you been here? Like, you know, I've been here 5 years. I'm like, you've been here 5 years, right? With this wealth of experience that you have, right? You should be essentially running this care home. Like you should have been up for promotion several years ago. You know, so that I'd ask these questions and I'd listen very carefully. And then I started to see like the world of work differently, because I could then see that, you know, there were younger people sort of leaving university, coming into the care, sort of like the care home that we were working at. And, you know, they would get promoted into management roles. And I'd think, oh, wow, you know, like, why is it that person is gaining that position quickly, just because of their color of their skin? But why is it that people, you know, who are black at low entry level positions are being overlooked all the time for promotion? So I started to look at that and think, okay, like, is it easy to just justify to say because you don't have qualifications, you don't have, you know, the right criteria, you don't necessarily fit the culture here, that you can't take on a position of leadership and management, that, you know, we're going to give it to someone else? You know, it wasn't so easy to say that. And that was in my position to think that, you know what, like, sometimes racism isn't always in your face. You know, it's not always out there, but it's actually layered into institutions and structures. And those institutions and structures can then have justifications that say, oh, wait, because you don't have certain qualifications, we're not going to give you this job yet. But, you know, keep working hard, keep trying hard, and then maybe next year we'll give you the job. You know, you do those things, but, you know, that doesn't come up. And that's how I started to think, you know what, like, that level of racism is actually a lot more dangerous, because then it keeps people stuck in certain positions.
No, thank you for that. I'm going to come to Lewis, and then, because you touched on a few things that we're going to be touching on in our next topic, so I'm going to come to Lewis and then we'll move on to the next topic.
Yeah, because I am conscious that we're going to speak about it, and I think Malambo touched on it. I won't necessarily share the experience in detail, but I do think that what Malambo's explained there, and I'm hesitant to say this only because we've got an associate professor of sociology on here, and he might turn around and say, no, Lewis, you're wrong. But from my own understanding and research and education, technically racism is a group construct, therefore meaning that people can be racially prejudiced and racially discriminatory, but the concept of being racist requires it to happen from group to group. So you're talking about the ability for a system to be created whereby oppression can be, you know, essentially can be continued and sustained, right? And so what it sounds like Malambo's talking about there is the inability to experience positive social mobility as a result of his skin tone. And I can definitely relate, simply due to the fact that I remember when I was 17, technically it wasn't my first job, but I see it like that, only in that I got this job, like, it was mad random how I entered the working world, because I didn't like do bare applications and get jobs. It was literally like, I was cracking on doing bare volunteering in my area, ended up doing a speech in my local library for an event I was part of, ended up just getting told you're doing a speech at the House of Commons in a couple months, did a speech at the House of Commons, a woman walked up to me like, you have a job whenever you need it. I was like, what? Who's this woman? Like, how are you going to just give man a job? But anyway, long story short, ended up working with this infrastructure investment company in she called it paid work experience, but you could deem it kind of like a traineeship, but there was no formal training. But the reason I bring it up is because I remember being, at that time, my contributions were fairly significant to the business development team, even though I was quote unquote inexperienced. And I noticed how there was literally a split within that team of 3 or 4 members of the team who were like, oh my gosh, let's expose Lewis to as much as possible to accelerate his development. And those that would purposely try and not put me on the Outlook invite to roll to certain meetings and all of that. And like, they would end up clashing, because you got the ones that were today we use the term ally, and you could say they were like early allies, right? Who were saying, nah, he needs to have the exposure. And then those that were like, nah, he's not ready. Now, obviously, me, I'm bossy. I'm like, big man, don't tell me what I'm ready for, innit? Like, don't ever do that because you don't know who I am, innit? But at the same time, I noticed that there was only one other black woman in, I don't want to say the company, but definitely on that whole floor of like 50, 60 people, there was one other black woman. I call her Auntie Sabrina. I've lost touch with her. I want to find her again. But anyway, she had my back. But I noticed how they would purposely try and draw a divide between us, almost as if she becomes an ally also, and I start building these allies, that may support my progression. So it was interesting how at that point, I'm going into my second year of college and I'm thinking, am I even hearing this whole uni thing? I don't really know. Do you get what I'm saying? But I said to them, right, would you not just give me a job at the end of college? And it was interesting again to see that clash on a second basis. And I remember thinking to myself, like, this is what systemic racism actually looks like. And I just thought I'd throw that in there because I think
did you think that then, or is it now that you're looking back on it that you're now starting to see that that's actually what that was?
The only reason I saw it then is because of that woman who showed it to me quite blatantly. Had she not done that, I would have just thought, right, they're bad mind, like, why are they moving like that? But she was able to explain it to me in a way that was understandable and digestible. And I think that helped me to understand how to navigate, right? However, I don't think it equipped me for being as astute as I am now, but it did just raise my level of awareness, which I think is what we're trying to do today, right? Raise people's level of awareness, which is why I wanted to share that thing about it being a group construct now, so that people don't think, you know, whether you're from whatever background, oh, but I don't say racist things, that doesn't mean you're racist. No, if you reinforce a racist system, you're racist, simple and plain. Even us, we may be non-racist, but to be counter-racist, to be anti-racist, you have to put every ounce of blood, sweat and tears into tackling a racist system. So it sounds like a big task, and I'm not trying to say there's pressure on us, but let's make sure we understand the entirety to which this concept exists.
Absolutely love that. I'll move on to our next topic, where we're going to be looking at what systems and institutions do you think disadvantage young black males in the UK? I want to hear from you, David, on this, because you talked about your experience coming over from Jamaica, and you said you were in Ipswich. What was that like for you going to school in Ipswich? What was your experience as a young black male in school, especially in an area where they weren't familiar with black people?
Well, I didn't stay there for long, and I'm not a good example because I think that my time in Jamaica and living there molded me for an upbringing that I see many people struggled where I didn't. I had such a sense of identity and of who I was that by the time I hit primary school and I was the only black person in there, that was not a problem for me. I was me in it. But I got that sense from walking around in a place where there's a bunch of me's, right? And so I've grown up now to see how important representation is in every aspect of life, because people struggle to believe in what they don't see, and that can even be regional. So a young person, so I grew up in Birmingham, I was only in Ipswich for 6 months, but young people from Birmingham might not necessarily look at a London successful person and feel like I can make it because they made it. Representation is needed so close. Representation might be needed just by seeing what your dad does for a living, what your neighbor does for a living, what the people in your city do. Because I've seen young people now from Birmingham see a career in comedy being viable because they've seen me do it and been successful at it. But then when it comes to Birmingham, there's not a lot of people that you can look at and say, that person made it from Birmingham. It's like 10 of us, and that includes Lenny Henry. So it's like, it's one of those things. But another thing that helped me in terms of almost, this made me see the system, a system that puts you in a position and a place where on a mental, because I think what doesn't get discussed a lot here is how these things affect your mind. Because I always tell people when it comes to business or even stepping into the media industry, don't step in here because you think you'll be successful alone. Also step in here if you have the mind to survive it. Not everybody has the mind to survive it. Not everybody has the mind to achieve, because sometimes you're so boggled down by the cares and concerns of life. Now, what I see happen in mainstream media is that the mental health of white people is so addressed. It's such a concern, right? That they build TV shows over Karen wanting cosmetic surgery because she doesn't feel good about her body. but then people do not take into account the level of mental anguish that goes through a Black person. For instance, I weep for the young people today that are growing up in school in the era where they watched an 8-minute video of George Floyd dying, and how that's going to affect your mentality. Now, I say all of that to say this: when I was in Jamaica coming up, in Jamaica, there's no, at that time, there's no official stores. I didn't walk around and see a Tesco or a Sainsbury's. I saw Mas John and Auntie Sally trying a thing. That's all I knew. So when I came to Britain, I came with an entrepreneurial mind, because that's all I saw everywhere. Other than banks, in my recollection of Jamaica, and yeah, I left when I was 11, but let's be clear, and 11, by the time you're 11 in Jamaica, you've lived life and you've seen things. I remember, nobody can tell me in this chat differently, I remember man driving to my primary school in Jamaica, students.
Standard.
I left there when I was 11. I said, I remember classmates driving, man can barely see over the dashboard. I remember that. So I feel like I came here and that equipped me, and that's what I'm realizing now. There is a lack of, for instance, when you talk about systematic oppression, it's systematic oppression to have systematic oppression exist and then not address it in the school curriculum to the appropriate level, because now you have a bunch of Black kids that know it by experience. You don't even have to teach it them. We know it because we're living through it when we walk through the store and then the store guy follows us. We're living it. So now white students that we're having to interact with that aren't living it have no context for it, other than when they talk about slavery back in the day, like this is a back in the day issue alone, that they just hover over. Oh yeah, that happened, and then they move on. But no, this is still happening today. Do you get what I'm saying? So I feel like right from the school system going upwards, now you have Black kids that are aware of it having to interact with white kids that are not aware of it and not being taught it. And so there's no sensitivity to our issues. So now we bungle up together, and that's what it carries on to the workplace, right? So now you have Black people in the workplace. What we do in the workplace is we huddle together and moan about what's happening at the job, but we never talk about it to our white workmates, because we believe that they won't understand because they have no context for what we're going through. But if systematic oppression and white supremacy was taught in schools, then it wouldn't be so alien to everybody, and everybody would know to look out for it, so that our white allies would be so aware of it, so on point when they see it, that when I explain it to them, I don't have to fear that I'll be judged as pulling the race card or exaggerating. So yeah.
Wow. You know, we're gonna touch on solutions and what we think could be done, you know, towards the end. But I think you've already started to kind of throw some gems in there that can get us all thinking in terms of what we can actively do. And you rightly said, like, you know, we work in companies and we face issues, but we don't address those issues. We keep it amongst ourselves. But I also feel like in the wake of the murder of George Floyd, the rise of the Black Lives Matter protests, I think these conversations are now, there's a space for us to have these kind of conversations. There's a lot more people that would actually listen and be like, actually, I recognize that as a problem now. You know, some people would argue and say, why has it taken so long for us to get to this point? My argument would be, at least we're here right now. You know, so let's make the most of what we have now. And my main concern, like you were saying about the young people growing up in this generation, witnessing a video like George Floyd being murdered, what that's doing to them, but then also what are we doing as individuals that are now in a position to do something about this for the next generation? What systems are we putting in place now that will change things in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years, to make sure that we're not having these same conversations? So we're going to touch on that. But I want to hear from one of you about your experience having developed a career in the UK as a young Black male. I don't know which one of you want to take that. I know who I would like to go to in my mind, but I'll throw it out there to see who wants to talk about their experience as developing a career in the UK.
I'm ready, but I'll let someone else go first.
happy to take this on, but it'd be good to hear from someone that hasn't spoken yet.
Yeah. But you see, with this one, it's like, if we're talking about career, Jonas is just starting out in his, Bismarck is also just starting out in his as well. So there are other questions that I'm going to direct to Jonas and Bismarck. So either one of you that have a career or that establish a career could actually take it.
Go for it, Malambo, bro.
So I'm halfway through what we call a training contract, and a training contract is 2 years. Once you complete the training contract, you officially become a qualified solicitor in England and Wales. And training contracts, they're not easy to come by. They're extremely difficult. About thousands of university students apply for this thing, and a lot of people don't get it, right? And I remember finally getting this offer from one of the top law firms in the world. It's called Freshfields, and it has this thing called a magic circle law firm because it has a huge revenue and profits, right? So it's not a joke. So I'm like, okay, I've got this thing. How then do I start navigating my career, right? Because I don't have people that I know, people in my family that have been through this career track before. I'm essentially a pioneer. This is my first time doing this, right? But the immediate thing that I have are maybe just mentors that I've met along the way and people within the workplace that I can network with and just start to ask the right questions. Say, hey, how did you start your career? How did you get in this position? And when I realized I remember the first time I'm now like in this law firm, and it's mad fancy in London. It's corporate, and there are people from really, really like posh backgrounds, upper class, middle class that are working there, and I'm there, I feel like I'm a corporate roadman, trying to navigate and adjust, and I have to put on different masks every time I come to work. I got to switch it up just to fit in, and there's a madness when I'm like, okay, first and foremost, like I need to get this right because I have to be my authentic self. I can't be coming into work, trying to be like someone I'm not. So I'm like, you know what, just be myself. That's who I am. Got that patterned. And the second thing was, okay, how then do I start progressing in my career? Because sometimes it's not just about what how bright and intelligent you are. What's also very important is who you know within the world of work. Who's actually going to be your sponsor? Who's going to open those doors for you and actually speak for you when you're not in the room, right? Speak for you in such a way that, when you're back in that room, people look highly of you and say, okay, this guy will put him up to the next position. We'll give him more work, develop his experience, and make sure that he's in a position where he can now start, working for clients and speaking to clients directly. That involved a lot of networking, going to social events, some events you don't even like, going to drinks, going out to, experiences that you have never been to before. I remember last year I went skiing for the first time. I've never been skiing in my life before. But I thought, I have to put myself out there. I have to put myself in positions where I'm exposed to people in different positions. I'm exposed to people that are in senior positions than me. So one, I can learn from them. They can know who I am. And two, one day they can speak for me when I'm not in the room. So that was the importance of networking and finding a sponsor, but also in a way where it's not just you taking all the time, but also I had to start thinking differently in the sense that how can I also start providing value, right? How can I start providing value? What can I give? What does this person want? And that could have been things like giving them a young person's perspective of coming into the world of work, telling them what it's like being a Black employee at this firm, what this firm can do to ensure that it's diverse, it's very inclusive, all those things matter. As Sideman said, representation matters. And also what I'm doing outside of work, trying to help young people coming up, people who are in positions that I was, opening doors for them as well. That's how I started to think differently. How can I start adding value? How can I network? And how can I find a sponsor? And by doing all those things, I started to advance through my career very fast. But more importantly as well, I had to make sure that I'm keeping up with the technical side of work, keeping up with the law, making sure that I still keep up with my books, I still keep up with my studies, even when I'm working. Those are all things that are very key to developing in your career.
100%. It's not all about networking. You have to be able to deliver as well. You can network all you want, but then when the opportunity comes and you fumble, that's it. So a lot of people like to have thousands of people on their LinkedIn, but it's like there's nothing there, or someone introduces you, they bring you into the room, and then you've got nothing to offer. So it's important that, like you rightly said, you're putting in the work as well as networking, as well as being your authentic self. I think a lot of people tend to lose that because they want to fit in. They want to fit in with those people that are up there, knowing that your background and their background is not the same. But you being true to yourself, I think that's our power. We're different, and we have to own our difference. We have to be proud of it, you know. So that's what makes us stand out. And the fact that you said you have something different, you have a unique perspective that you can bring to the table, that's welcomed. I think, Lewis, you had something to add to that.
Yeah, again, I am very conscious. I know that we've got limited time, and Jonas and Bismarck, we want to definitely hear more from. But I do think I've had an interesting experience on the flip side of what you just mentioned there, which is I agree wholeheartedly that things like your personal and professional brand are critical, because of the fact that if you do it with a level of authenticity that says, I'm going to show you what I've done, not just what I think, not just to make myself look good, but to genuinely show the value that I can bring to the table, is important. But I think what's interesting about that is that sometimes as a black male, in my opinion, and people can disagree with me here, I don't think we have to be in agreement on everything. Sometimes as black males, that you have to do even more of that. And I think the same is for black females as well. They're having to go, and I know we're going to talk about that next week. Well, we're not, but they are going to talk about it next week, which I think is important, that you almost have to do even more of that just to justify the value. Like me personally, people think I'm young right now. It's just true, my coconut oil's ton up in it, but that's not the point, yeah? Like my coconut oil's ton up, diet's good, sleep well and that. But because of the fact that I am a quote unquote young black male, I think people sometimes don't realize, and I'm just going to say it boldly, like you have to put respect on my name, full stop, because if you talk about the sectors to which I operate in, I've been doing amazing things, and I say that quite self-righteously, for the last 10 years in this sector. Where I look around, there are programs that still exist to this day that I was one of the people who designed, or maybe designed on my own, that people don't even know. But because I didn't do the thing of, let me go on LinkedIn and this place and that place and talk about it, I was just so in doing the work. Sometimes I get overlooked. And what's funny, people will literally, there's someone sitting at home right now watching this saying, wow, they're so passionate. They're not saying, oh, they're so intelligent. Wow, they really understand the subtle nuances between this and that. Wow, they're so charismatic. Excuse me? Is that the extent to what I bring to the table? Don't ever do that with Lewis Howell, because I will wipe the floor of everybody when it comes to designing anything. And I know that now, and and I say it boldly now, because as far as I'm concerned, my heart's in the right place when I do these things. I do it because I genuinely know the value I can add, and I know who the beneficiaries of the work that I do are. So now I have got to a point where I look at it in my career and I go, for example, when I was 21 and I was in one of the last jobs I had before I quit my job and started working for myself about 5 years ago, I remember having a manager who I noticed that he would kind of be that thing of like, wouldn't do no work, but then like he'd have a deeper meeting. He'd know that I know how to present myself, speak well, win people over. Let's bring Lewis. Big man, when I told you to prepare for the report that we need to submit in 2 months, 3 months ago, you didn't want to hear it, but now suddenly you're scrambling. I remember him saying to me, no, just trust me. I said, big man, I can't trust you. I'm not seeing no results from you. He said, but you know, I'm 36, you're 21. I've got 15 years on you. And I had to say to him, no, big man, that's not how this works. Since I was 16, I've been playing 3 roles a day for the last 5 years. I've been working, volunteering, starting businesses, all of that stuff for the last 5 years. Intense acceleration of my development. So your 15 years and my 15 years are the same, because I've just done 15 years in 5 years. So where do we go from here? Where do we go from here? Because as far as I'm concerned, I know intellectually I'm bringing something more to the table. I know skill set wise I'm bringing something to the table. I know that I was like Melambo. I had a point in that same job where people thought I had issues at home, because after work every single day I would just go to events, network, and I wasn't even doing it for me anymore. I was doing it for my friends that would have come to the events with me when I called them, so that my network became their network. Do you understand? So yes, I agree with the networking. Yes, I agree with the having to add value. But if you are genuinely someone who believes you want to tackle systemic racism in the professional world, what you have to start doing is understanding that every time we do something and we're keeping a track of it, we know you're not keeping track of it. So I know I work for myself, but I know some people who are in jobs who are saying, I might do this, but I know my manager's not watching that. My supervisor's not watching that. The rest of the company's not looking at the value I just added. So when they go for the promotion now, they're getting told you ain't got enough experience. What? They just started 17 initiatives in the last 3 years in your company, and you want to overlook them. How dare you? How dare you? So because we also, the final thing I'll say is, because we operate within a capitalist setting, we also have to be able to some extent, if we can, it's not always possible, if we can also attach the financial value that your efforts put in, then it becomes undeniable. Because now it's like, I'm bringing something to the table that's so undeniable that it's either you give me what I deserve or you lose me. Decide.
Yeah, you have
Decide.
to know your value, and you have to know what you're bringing to the table. There's no two ways about it. I'm gonna come quickly to Jonas and Bismarck. I want to know, and this is quite a tough question, but I know you guys are gonna deal with it adequately. Do you think black males are particularly disadvantaged in the UK, and if so, why?
Jonas, you want to go first or should I? All right, I'll go first. Well, I feel like, I mean, in terms of opportunities, then I feel like you kind of, at the end of the day, you have to make of it what you can. Like, obviously, you know, as a black male, there are going to be some challenges, possibly even more challenges than everyone else. There are going to be some hard decisions. People are going to look at you in a different way, which then would lead you to then be at a disadvantage because maybe someone thinks you can't do that. Maybe someone thinks you're not qualified. Like it was mentioned earlier, maybe someone's just not seeing what you're doing, and then you're just not getting any credit or credibility for, you know, the great things that you can achieve because ain't nobody giving you any accountability for it. So it's like, I feel like we're at a disadvantage if we don't put in that extra, you know, that extra 150%, you know what I'm saying? Like, at the same time, yeah, we gotta work twice as hard so we're not at that disadvantage, if you get what I'm saying. Yeah.
No, thank you for that. Jonas, do you have something to add? You're on mute still.
Sorry, guys. Sorry. So I'd just like to start off by saying there's one of the laws of success is the law of attraction, which means that if you think positive things, you'll get positive results. If you think negative things, you'll get negative results. Therefore, I do feel that in your head, you can believe we are at a disadvantage and you can think that we are at an advantage. I'll tell you why, because yes, there are times that there is white privilege. You can't deny it. And this is one of the reasons why young people fall into gangs, because some people are boxed into their communities where all they see on TV is black people doing crime. So they automatically think, this is the availability heuristic bias, which is a cognitive bias in psychology. They automatically think by seeing that on the news, every black person is a criminal. So when you walk on the street, there are actually black people who see each other, instead of nodding, because when I see fellow black men, I'll give them a quick nod. It's called, I think it's called the black nod, I don't know what it is. I'll give them a quick nod. Some people will cross the road because they're nervous of their own people. A lot of young people fall into gangs by getting groomed, but also sometimes because of white privilege and us being at a disadvantage, they're boxed into their communities and their parents are struggling to pay the bills. So they feel the only way they can make money is by drug dealing. And then they fall into the gang life. That is one of the ways. But the reason I said the whole thing about if you think positive things, you get positive results, because I remember when I was in secondary school and this is year 11. So I remember I got sent out of my class and I was sitting down outside one of the assistant principal's offices. And some black teacher just kept annoying me, coming up to me saying, oh, and I was like, can you get out of my face, please? Because I really don't want to deal with this right now. I got my GCSE soon and my grades aren't looking too good. So I want to focus on that. So I remember she said, oh, you're a black boy, Jonas. She's a black teacher too. She's like, you're a black boy, Jonas. You've got to work twice as hard. And in my head, I was like, I do not care if I'll go work twice as hard because I should be working twice as hard regardless. If I really want to be successful, then I need to work twice as hard. So in my head, the fact that we have to work twice as hard, although we cannot deny we are at a disadvantage by the media, even our own people, even though some of our own people stab us in the back. I feel that we should be working harder than everybody else regardless. I do not care if we have to work twice as hard. That's just life. Life's unfair. We've been dealt these cards. So we should just say to ourselves, am I going to use this as motivation or am I going to use this to drown me? So it's however you take it. You can take it as an advantage or you can take it as a disadvantage. I say it's 50-50, but because my perspective is that I can use this to become the greatest person I can possibly become.
And that's why he's an international motivational speaker. You know, you just laid it down right there for all of us to hear. it depends on how you look at it. You can either look at it as a disadvantage or you can look at it from a positive standpoint. Now, I'm going to give you guys the impossible task of, only because I know the time is going and obviously we've got questions coming in. We've got about 19 questions and I know a lot more are going to come in. But the last phase of this, I really want to talk a little bit about solutions. So the task is, I want you in one line, tell us what you think can be done to tackle systemic racism in institutions and systems, particularly affecting young Black males. And then in another line, highlight some of the organizations that you think are doing positive work in this field. Who's ready to go? Jason, you put your hand up. I know it probably wasn't because of this, but I'm going to come to you anyway.
I guess if I was going to say it in one line, I think collective endeavour is really important. So I think it needs to be a collective effort, and I think the labour of dealing with race work can't be left to Black people alone. It doesn't make any sense to have a group of people remove themselves from a problem they never asked to have in the first place. So I think it needs to be a collective endeavour in terms of there needs to be a redistribution of privilege, which white people have to be willing to give up. And I think it's really important that it's a collective endeavour. And I think there are some great organisations like Leading Roots, for example, that work specifically with working with pipelines in terms of getting young Black people into academia, led by Paulette Williams and Chantel Lewis. There are organisations like the Black Curriculum, who have written a report for the need of Black history in schools, led by Lavinia Stennett, who's done some brilliant work on this area. There are some really really great grassroots organisations as well that have worked, and there are so many, so I wouldn't want to pick one out specifically because they're all doing fantastic work. But I do think the collective aspect of it is really important. At the moment, a lot of what's happening is very fractious, and I think with a lot of gang activity and a lot of other activities, they're all fractious. They kind of all operate for us to work against one another, when I think at the moment we kind of operate as twitching fingers when we kind of need to be a clenched fist, and I think that's really, really important.
Love that. So collective endeavor. So instead of working as twitching fingers, we need to be a collective fist. Love that. Malamba.
What I would say is representation is extremely important, and it's about giving people opportunities for higher positions and to excel in those fields. That way they can be role models for people coming up that look like them, that sound like them, that are from similar background experiences like them, to look up to, so that they too can believe that, you know what, I see myself in that person and I can do it too. So, you know, particular organizations are known for not being very diverse, especially within senior levels. At board level, when you look at certain companies, you know, their leadership is not diverse at all. So they make decisions in terms of those companies that don't really, for instance, may not be in the interest of people from, you know, from Black backgrounds or ethnic minority backgrounds. So, you know, they need to be a lot more diverse to ensure that, you know, when people look up to them, they can see themselves in those positions too.
Okay, so representation is what you're saying would be the solution. Bismarck, what would you have to say on this?
Really, I feel like the main thing for me would just be education. Like, people need to be educated, and like, knowledge is power. And I feel like the more we know, the more people will start to become aware. So yeah, I feel like for me, education and just educating, even in the school systems, even between ourselves in our own communities, I feel like is very important.
Love that. Education, definitely. Lewis.
Big man, one line. This is mad. On an individual level within an organizational system, I like what Dr. Neely Fuller talks about a lot, which is that the best way for someone who's reinforcing a white supremacist system to tackle that is, first of all, tell the truth. Just tell the truth. Just be honest, be transparent, because until you do that, you will continue to create cognitive dissonance amongst society, amongst the communities that are oppressed. So that's the part on the individual level. Organizationally, I would say it is about taking your approach to diversity and inclusion or tackling racism in a very multifaceted way. So looking at your social structures that exist, the economic structures that exist, the partnerships and collaborations that exist, and then also where you sit within wider society, and then how that plays into your ability to advance people into positions of leadership so that true equity can be gained. Because it's not about saying we've got 20% black people and all the black people them are the cleaners. We know that, you understand? So it's about going to that point of understanding what true equity looks like. So to me, it's about, I know that's very complicated. It sounds complicated, actually, let me not lie, but it's not one of those things that people can just tweet now and be like, yeah, he just said this too, like, sorry, but it's just that deep in it. Organizations that are doing great work, I think there are a number, do you know what I mean? Like, let's take UK Youth, for example, as a start. They're making steps in the right direction here. Do you get what I'm saying? I've been involved in a number of conversations about that. Selfishly, I'm going to say 100 Black Men of London, who I volunteer with. Do you get what I'm saying? Because I'm a very proud member of 100 Black Men of London. I also think that if you look at it from a professional standpoint, we have to take our hats off to BYP now. Do you get what I'm saying? BYP Network, sorry. Do you know what I mean? So big up to the whole of BYP Network in regards to what they're looking to do to really advance the opportunities for Black professionals. And then I think you've also got some that don't directly relate necessarily to the professional world, but when you think about the ability to access wealth and think about supporting Black business, I look at Jammy, and maybe I'm selfish because I went to college with their founder, Kalia, do you know what I mean? But I look at organizations like Jammy who are making it very easy to know where and how to spend with Black business. And actually big up David as well, because obviously man's a fan of him and Zizi's show, yeah? And they always are bigging up Black businesses on there as well. So just look into them lot show and just listen to them lot talk, and also look at who they're promoting, do you get what I'm saying? So you can take that in. Oh, and by the way, David, while we got the platform, respect on what you did the other day, man, real talk.
Thank you. Jonas, and then we'll wrap up with David.
Yeah, so my one is start and support Black businesses. Now, I know this is something that everybody says a lot, but I'm not gonna lie, a lot of people say, oh, let's support Black businesses, but I don't really see it being done that much where I'm coming from. A lot of people do it, but a lot of people that are making noise that I personally know that are my age, and I know there's not a lot of people here that are in the teens like I am, but a lot of people my age are always saying, oh, support Black business, but they don't do any of that because they have a crabs in the bucket mentality. But a lot of adults are doing that, and I respect that highly. But why don't you try to start your own Black business? Because people like to complain, and I'm not accusing anyone of this. However, I spoke about this in a YouTube video that I did the other day, and it was just a message to the Black community about what I feel we can do to rise and really become the kings and queens that we were once upon a time in the motherland in Africa. So at the end of the day, a lot of people say, oh, when I apply for a job because I've got an African name, I don't get the job. Oh, yeah. And it's true that the studies show that when you have an African surname, you're less likely to get the role other than your white counterparts. However, what can you do? How about you start your own business and then employ other Black people that are having the same problem as you, so people get into work, and then empower them to start their own businesses until it's an effect on the whole of our community. Because if you look at the Jewish community, somebody tried to kill the whole race, and now they're doing amazingly, right? They came together and they're doing amazingly. Why can't we do that as well? Why can't we mirror that and make sure we can do that too? Because if it worked for the Jews, I'm sure it can work for the Black community too. And that's why I say start and support Black businesses.
Love that. Start and support Black businesses. David, what's your one solution that you think could tackle all of these issues and plug some of the organizations that you think are doing some good work around the topic?
They say if you control the media, you control the masses. I think it would be great if 20 of the biggest, not just in terms of, they have to be financially free, economically safe, of the biggest Black celebrities, it's important that they're known as well, in the UK formed a Black board, right? They don't have to be intrinsically involved in everything on a day-to-day basis, but if they were to hire staff, right, that sift through Black complaints from, if you know something's going on in your company that's not right, they review that, they assess it. When they find something that's going on wrong in the company, that now is posted simultaneously by all 20 members of that board, because I truly believe, right, what they are scared of, because we do not have the economic power to frighten these companies. What they're frightened of is bad publicity, because bad publicity affects their money, right? I've seen this, I've seen it. I've seen U-turns based upon bad publicity. And so if you had Stormzy's and John Boyega's, and you could be anybody, you could be somebody just working at a Lundy somewhere, but you've experienced negativity in the organization that you're working in, and you bring it in and we legitimize that claim and say, yes, this is a legitimate claim. Now every company has to worry, we don't want the blackboard on us, so we got to make sure that our practices are right. We got to make sure that we deal with these people properly. We got to make sure that there's representation in the workplace, because you know at any moment in time, you could have 20 people with a lot of followers and you're trending, basically. You're trending every single time they say so. And to me, that's not a hard thing to accomplish, and it's something that I'd like to see happen in the future.
You know, thank you so much for saying that, David. And what you just said is basically, if we look at it, if we look back to what everybody has said, it's tracing that back. It's got to do with Black businesses. It's got to do with education. It's got to do with us being collaborative, working together, unity. So I think we're all saying the same thing in this way, that we all need to come together and tackle this issue head on. We can't be coming at it on a silo tip and like, you know, this one's doing that, that one's doing that, this one's doing that. We need to come together. We've recognized that there's a problem. We know that we have the solution to the problem. Now we need to come together and strategize on how we're going to effectively tackle that problem. And this is just the beginning. This is the beginning of that conversation. It's 20 past. We've got 5 minutes left before we wrap up. I'm going to try and take some of the questions from the Q&A. I know some they're literally flying in now, but I'm also going to give those of you that are watching and listen to us a task as well. Well, a lot of these questions we're not going to be able to tackle right here, but I think we can take this conversation onto social media, use the hashtag @UKYouth, and I'll ask the panelists as well to, you know, dedicate some time to this on social media to answer some of the questions that the people have. And I know I mentioned about organizations. There's so many people on this call right now that have access to or know of organizations that are doing amazing work. Let's start a thread, you know, add them so we can follow them, put them on the hashtag Young and Black, at them so we can know them and we can see what they're doing. I'm gonna pick some questions. I've been going through some of the questions, and I don't know how many we're going to be able to take, depending on how quick the panel can answer the question. But I want us to touch this one from Sharon Clark. She said, as a Black female tutor within the prison system, how do you feel you can raise your profile of positive images of Black males? And would you be willing to work with the education provides to work hand in hand in changing the narrative of Black males and showcase the work that you guys are doing as positive role models? What do you guys have to say to that?
I think the answer is yes. I'm sure all of us, capacity permitting, would want to be able to make a contribution and add value in any environment. And, you know, I think assuming that I'm receiving what she said correctly, she's maybe talking about being able to raise the profile of Black males full stop, especially where it affects the education of those from across the whole Black male community, but also especially within the prison system. And I think we all would. Do you get what I'm saying? So I think the simple answer is yes. And I think, you know, riding off something that David said, it's a case of us being able to consider how we do go about, and not even how, because we all know how to do it. Let's be real. It's just us making excuses if we're talking about being able to really be in the public eye in the best way possible. And it doesn't matter how big or small your following is, just taking it upon yourself to do that. But as you said, Duro, having a coordinated effort. And big up Sandra in the Q&A for the marriage proposal. But yeah.
I thought you would have skipped that one. No picture attached, no nothing, just name, you know. All right, that's cool. But on the whole positive role model stance, I also like to touch on the fact that I think we need to change what the perception of a positive role model looks like for young Black men, because a lot of people have this idea of maybe someone that's in the public eye. Because they're in the public eye, automatically they should be seen as a positive Black role model for young Black men, or whether they're in entertainment, music, sports, or whatever. I think, and I always challenge young people that I come across as well. I said, you probably walk past role models every single day and you don't even think that they're role models. You know, there's someone on that council estate that is studying to be a doctor, studying to be a barrister, doing all these things, doing things in the right way. Why is it that we wait for someone to, have a colored past, turn their life around, and then we say, oh yeah, that person's a role model? What about all the young people that didn't make that mistake? What about all the young people that didn't go down that path? What about the young people that kept on the straight and narrow, did everything the right way, came out on the other side. I think we need to start championing a lot more of those stories. We need to start
That's so
championing
powerful.
a lot more of those individuals to say, this is the standard. Do you get it? You don't need to go off and then come back, you know, even though that's my story, but even me looking back, it's one of those things that I realize I respect those that stayed on the straight and narrow. My boys that, you know, didn't do what I did and came out and are standing strong today. Like, I think we need to start championing a lot more of those stories. I think, Jason, you wanted to...
I was going to say that I honestly think that's the most important thing I might have heard today, because I think that narrative has to change. I think it's too skewed towards the other side, and I think there are a lot of people that stay on, because I think it's sensationalism. It's kind of, that might sell headlines and that might sell papers, but actually there are a lot of people that do it the right way, and I do think that doesn't get spoken about a lot, because in my opinion, that's sustained excellence. It doesn't make it any better, but it is sustained excellence. And I don't think that gets a lot of acknowledgement, because I think what we gravitate towards are footballers, and it's just different, because with white people, they acknowledge that, and they acknowledge, and we need to be able to kind of do the same. Because I think there's so many, you know, I remember someone saying something very similar to me a couple of years ago. You walk past role models every day, Jason. How do you, you know, and I think that point you just made, honestly, if there was a take-home point, that for me is it, I think, because that's so important.
Love that. And, you know, people like to point out the media and say, you know, the media not telling enough positive stories, but we have our own media now. We can tell the positive stories.
Exactly.
And that's what I'm talking about with this hashtag. Let's make it happen. We have the power. All you need to do is tweet. You see a young person, black, white, not well, I mean, young male, female, whatever, doing something positive, share it. They don't have to be, you know, a celebrity in order for you to like or reshare their post. You know, it's our responsibility. This is our community. And it still comes down to the unity standpoint. It's like, if you win, I win, we win. It's not me against you. It's all of us trying to uplift our communities. And I think that's a good point to welcome back Shanice. I know we went over by a minute. I hope you forgive me, but I did try my best. But there's a lot of information that we're trying to get across today. There's a lot of passion, a lot of emotion, and a lot of stories that we need to, you know, continue talking about. So if you guys take me up on it, let's head over to social media and keep the conversation.
Yeah. Can we get everybody to share their questions with us on Twitter, and then if we have time, we respond? You know what I'm saying?
Actually, I was gonna put that on the UK youth team.
Yeah.
On social media. So if anyone can let me know the questions, that'd be great.
Yeah.
That is okay. We'll copy down the questions and we'll circulate them so everyone has an opportunity to answer them. I just want to say a huge thank you to the panel. There's a bunch of comments in there just saying how wonderful and how great you are. And I think everyone has been saying some amazing, amazing things. I think if we can close on just one point. So just to everyone, if there's a young black male who's watching this, what would be something you would say to him? And then we can wrap up and close. So let's start with Malambo, and then we'll go around.
You know, I would say don't ever give up, but more importantly, even in your struggles and the hardship that you may be going through, is don't be afraid to ask for help. Because the biggest forms of success that I received were people that looked out for me because I asked them for help, and they opened certain doors and were able to offer support, either be emotionally or financially. And that was because I was brave enough to ask for help, and at times I even swallowed my pride to ask for that help.
Thank you, so positive. Jason?
I would say probably for me the single biggest thing is humility. I always think it's the most underrated quality in life. And I think if you have humility, you're able to engage with other people. You're able to walk in light because you can learn as you're going along. So I think humility for me is the most important thing. And I can, you know, I think it's one of the rarest qualities that you find in a human being. But I think it's something that if people, just generally speaking, regardless of race, can actually be more humble. And I think there's a beauty in that you don't get when you're not like that, in my opinion.
Great, thank you. Lewis?
Yeah, listen, observe, learn, and make sure you contribute when you know you have something to be able to add value to. Simple and plain.
Thank you. Duro?
I'll say believe in you. You know, that there's that ability to believe in the power of you, what you have on the inside of you. And just an additional point to that is not every mentor that you have needs to look like you or have come from the same background as you.
Word.
So
Thank you. David?
I'd say be intentional. So don't let life carry you away. Be very purposeful in how you move and even how you think. Don't just think randomly. Think on purpose. Think on things not by accident. Don't let your surroundings, the music that you listen to, the friends that you have shape your thoughts without your knowledge or subconsciously. Just be very, very aware of what your mind is doing and try to purposely insert thoughts that are going to be positive and lead towards a positive end.
Wow, thank you. Jonas, what would you say to your peers, fellow young black men?
I'd say stay true to yourself and stay true to the game. Don't cheat your way to the top. Don't try to stay out of illegal stuff, and just be intrinsically motivated, not extrinsically motivated. Follow stuff that will motivate you. Do what you want to do in life. Don't listen to what anybody else says. It's your life. You're the driver and you're the CEO. Buy or hire and do what you got to do accordingly.
Thank you. And then Bismarck?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say just take every opportunity you can. Try, like, opportunities, just all the open doors you see, just take them and, you know, just try and make the right decisions along the way.
Great, thank you. So a huge thank you to our panelists. Thank you so much. I feel like we could have been on here for 2-3 hours just continuing that conversation, and we've just hit the surface. So please, everyone who's watching, please get involved in the Young and Black campaign. If you'd like to share your stories, you can share those on social media and at UK Youth or hashtag Young and Black. But I think what we can pull from this conversation is that we need to continue the work, and this needs to be a continual journey, and everyone needs to work together to ensure that we're achieving the goals that we need to achieve. So please use the hashtag, tag us on social. Everyone has agreed they're going to answer these questions, so I'm going to send them through to everyone, and everyone's going to be responding on social media. And just to say, we have a series of events for the Young and Black. So the next one is next week, Wednesday, the 16th, and that will be exploring Black female identity within the UK. So we've got an amazing panel. So please sign up and join those. But we also have other events happening. So go on the Eventbrite for UK Youth and you can get access to those. But thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Let's continue the conversation and let's continue to impact change. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening, everyone. Thank you.